Hi, I'm Hui Jane, short for some lovely reason, who is introducing popular menus in Japan with effort and taste optimized own recipes that taste like a pro. In this video, the recipe of twice-cooked pork or double-cooked pork will be introduced. It's basically a Chinese cuisine, but somehow it became very popular in Japan. Twice-cooked pork can be one of the ultimate menus going well with white rice, in my opinion. This refreshingly spicy dish uses defunct Chinese seasonings, so by watching this video, you will know how those spices are used. Eating this dish makes me always feel like literally refreshing, in a healthy way, thanks for the power of spices used, and it's worth experiencing it. And for that, the dish hasn't got proper world recognition yet, and it could be more popular, in my opinion. So bottom line is, if you're interested in getting some cooking repertoire from Asian foods, this is where you must pay a visit. In advance, I'd like to mention important points of today. There are two. First, here is a list of ingredients and seasonings. Point number one is about required items. As you can see, there are many Chinese cooking-specific items required. Ingredients like cabbage can be optional, but most peppers and seasonings are indispensably required, like Doubanjiang, Szechuan pepper, hopefully the one retained in its bean shape, and Douchi, the black-colored Chinese way seasoning, which I don't know exactly how, soybean, and Chinese chili oil. Also, better have Doubanjiang, but it can be optional in my opinion. So like that, maybe getting all these items can be some experience for you, but also the experience of actually using it for your own cooking is definitely worth to have. So let's prepare pork, and here's the second point, the pork meat. As its name suggests, the pork meat requires a double heating process, boiling and frying in a pan. The boiling doesn't require much effort, and you can just wait for some time, but the time, it takes an hour or so. So if you don't want to take that time, then skipping the boiling part can be an option to make a reasonable compromise. This video covers that part of the process, but to be honest, 90% of the time I make this dish, I skip that boiling part and buy an already thin sliced in advance pork belly meat pack instead. In Japan, where I live, twice-cooked pork is very common. It's like one of the everyday menus. But what is actually common is the effort-shortened, time-convenient version of it. Genuinely making it in the original Sichuan style is not so common, like never in usual home cooking. Though, at least for your first time, I recommend not to skip it. The tender and soft texture of the pork coming from the in-advanced boiling significantly makes it better. Also, it can make the meat softer, so you can cut it into thicker pieces and make it more gorgeous. Anyway, the point here is, knowing both actually helps. For my variation this time, I boil pork with some amounts of shoyu, sake, and mirin like usual Japanese cooking might do with boiling. In this way, the pork can absorb a slight enough taste of shoyu and sweetness from sake and mirin. Also, you can use the boiling water used for udon soup or something later, and that also tastes very good. After an hour or so, please poke the meat with a skewer, and if the juice coming out of the hole is transparent, it's fine. If the juice is still red, please boil more for a while, further 15 minutes or so. And one piece of advice here, regarding the boiling time, within an hour on low heat is usually the way, but longer the time, the meat becomes softer. So, it depends on each person's liking, but for example, for my liking, I go with 90 minutes and make the pork extra soft, and then cut the piece in thicker than usual, so that the presence of the well-prepared meat can stand in the dish. Using shoyu in boiling water also does some good work for this, when it's cut in the thicker pieces. And I'm confident that my way of using the thicker meats is just right. Trust me on that. So let's cut each ingredients. For ingredients used as spices, garlic is cut like this in my case. And I use Sichuan pepper and Douchi without cutting. It's optional, but you can mince these in advance. If you mince these, it will have a strong aroma. So if you are not familiar with its taste and smell, without mincing would be better for your first time, in my opinion. The scallion cut into slices like this. And garlic scape is most likely only available in Asian or Chinese cooking or ingredient specific shops. And garlic scape is something you don't want to skip, in my opinion. So please get this item. As I mentioned, I want the pork slice to be thicker than normal, so I cut the pork into 6 to 7 millimeter thick pieces. Usually it should be 2 to 3 millimeter, so my variation is quite thick. Since it already has a subtle taste of shoyu, it's delicious at this point already. Now let's cook. Oil a pan on high heat, and once it becomes hot, turn it to medium heat and stir fry meats. The point here is that you want to make an ideal burnt color on the meat surface for both sides. Once it becomes so, then remove the meats from the pan and keep it somewhere around you. At this point, the pan now has extra oils coming out from the pork's fat, and from here, ingredients are fried with it. The first goal has to be spices. Turning the fire on low heat, please remember that. Here's some room for an adjustment for your own liking. The chili pepper is the hottest spice of all, and how long you fry it makes how hot it ends up to be. For my case, as an example, whenever I make this recipe is when I've got a desire for something very spicy hot, so I start with only chili pepper first for a while, and then add all other spices and fry it for a while until all become aromatic. By its smell, you can tell that you're making something great at this point already. Then add Doubanjiang and Doubanjiang. Another cooking tip to mention here, frying these seasonings with oil can enhance their flavor. So whenever you use these, please stir fry it for a while before the seasoning is mixed with ingredients. Then add mirin to add sweetness and simmer for a while until its water is gone. Then put scallion and garlic scapes and fry them for a while. Then turn the fire on high heat, add meat and cabbage and fry them all for a bit. And then add a slight amount of shoyu and then mix it well quickly, and you can turn off the fire. Finally, add a bit of the sesame oil and plenty of chili oils are added, and it's complete. It's definitely worth experiencing. And thank you for watching. See you next time.